How are you guys?
Do you have your visa yet?
I do have my visa, yes.
Congratulations. Shall I do what I did
But
last
I don't have
few
a
weeks
green
ago?
card. How are things, Dustin?
Things are good. I'm going to be struggling with my voice today, but hopefully y'all can hear me and understand what I'm saying.
Good. Patrick, how is the do? Oh, for everyone who watched it, Patrick has been shopping this week and he's upgraded the jacket with a new chair. How's it going?
It's comfy. It's very comfy. So I'll try not to doze off.
All right, guys, let's dive into this. So this week we're going to be talking about some new tariffs, which have, oh, surprise, surprise, new tariffs that have come into play. I think maybe it was announced yesterday or the day before, which is 50% on aluminium or aluminum, as you say over in the US, on still on aluminium, and the impact this might have on construction. And this coincides with Skanska, who have just released a 2025 spring construction market trends. So we will dive into what that says and some of the topics within there. We were just talking beforehand about the subject of forward deployed engineers and whether this is a growing trend within the AEC space. We'll dive into where the subject of whether founders should be working 9 to 9, 6 days a week in order to become successful in the world of building startups. And finally, ChatGPT announced just yesterday about this new note-taking tool. And what does this mean for the AI companies in AEC tech? So before we get started, um, let's go into this. So tariffs, guys, what do you think? Do you think that currently the tariffs which have been put on the table have been marked as illegal by the US court system? Do you think that this new announcement of 50% on the steel is going to actually go into force?
I'm sure if they said that, that's happening. That's what's happening.
Wait, are you being sarcastic, Martin? I can't tell.
No, I'm actually serious.
Okay. But there
Why
have
are
been
you thinking
announcements
there will be
before
a...
that did not go into force.
No, they did go into force, right?
Yeah, but then they got rebuked from for the legal system, no?
There have
No,
been some tariffs that have gone enforced. If you look at the tax revenue from tariffs or the tariffs revenue, it's more than doubled in the last 2 months from what we've ever collected before. So there is substantially more
congrats.
tariffs coming into the United States than previously we've ever seen. However, the court did rule that some of Trump's tariffs are exceeding his power because he was using emergency powers to leverage some of his tariffs, and some of his negotiating tactics are kind of proving the fact that this might not be existential threats, which give the president enormous power to use tariffs.
Here you
So
go.
whether or not these will stay into effect, who knows? I think if you look at the stock market, everyone's starting to normalize to this sort of chaos. It's been less volatile in the market. So I think that there's a world where this is about negotiation and people understand that. And while the ride might be bumpy, I think people are getting more confident that the economy can survive this and we can get to a happy medium. Will some costs and input costs go up? Yes. Will there be a reorganization of the supply chain? More than likely. There's going to be certain things that favor uh, US companies, and it's a little bit of protectionism. Um, and unfortunately or fortunately, that's this administration stance.
That's just the way it is. Patrick, do you have any opinions?
I mean, I just looked it up again. I mean, um, can someone fact check me here? So what I'm finding is that they announced tariffs on semiconductors as well as pharmaceuticals earlier this year, which actually did not go into effect. Do you guys remember it that way?
I've heard similar.
So I'm not saying just delayed. Like, so what they did versus the EU, I mean, that's the next battle that is being picked. That's delayed by 4 weeks, whatever
Uh-huh.
supposedly gives leverage. But these are not just delayed. Also, what happened with the Canadian and Mexican 25% tariffs set to take effect on March 4th? Did they actually come into effect?
I think also delayed 90 days.
I think those are delayed.
Delayed. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Pretty much
Yeah.
most of those are delayed 19 days.
Hmm.
Then I think there was one deal done with the UK, and I don't know, were there any other deals done with any other countries?
Hmm.
China.
No, for sure not.
I mean, it's a deal,
Mm.
right? But it's not a deal. I mean, whichever way you look at it, influences behavior in one way or another. But let's
But
give some context.
Yeah, to the point of what Dustin said, that you guys collected the largest revenues ever from tariffs, so they are working. So maybe you are balancing your budget right now
It's not going to balance the budget. I think the numbers I
to a
saw,
level.
tariffs represented 4% of our budget, and it's projected to reach 2%, and then it's projected to reach 4%. So I'm looking at the number on Politico. The United States has generated $69.6 billion from tariffs as of June 2nd. That's 79% more than the same time last year.
Hmm.
So it is a dramatic increase on the amount of money coming into the country.
I mean, if you have
So
a
my
on.
question is not to be taken sarcastic. I'm not sarcastic. I'm not cynical. I think our job here is maybe to inform and to entertain. So I'm trying to do the informing part now, and then we can come to the entertaining part later. So it's a serious, genuine question. I know the answer, but let's make sure everyone also hears us say this. Who pays these tariffs? So when you say you have the biggest tariff revenue, who paid it?
It's a great question. I think there's some debates from the economists, but most people would contend that the consumer ultimately ends up paying.
Mm.
Yeah,
Steve?
me with not knowing the answer to this question, the company that imports the material. Huh?
Yeah, but then they will put the cost onto the consumer further.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's not paying, Martin?
Who is not paying?
Not Porsche. Porsche is not paying
Why not?
because it's literally the person importing the Porsche paying.
Mm-hmm. So
That
it goes
is
from
true.
the consumer. It
That is
skips
true, but
this.
I think the reasoning was to make these foreign products more expensive, so that the interior market of goods will be boosted, and there will be more production facilities internally in the US.
So I'll just point out now you're following the public reasoning of that. I do think there's a more nefarious reason or a couple more nefarious reasons to go along with that, but let's not go into. I need to find a different podcast to do my conspiracy theories. So I'll not bother you guys.
Nefarious off the table.
We should do one on conspiracy theories.
But look, you should invite my partner Shoop and discuss ancient aliens. You will have a hell of an episode, Owen. But not with me on that topic. But Martin, look, in the end, it's all about comparative cost structures. And so just because you raise the tariffs on imports because you think that makes your own internal manufacturing base incentivized to onshore everything still doesn't make you comparatively more cost competitive in the global comparison to another country that might have a cost structure benefit to manufacture the same, right? So that is where the thinking oftentimes ends when someone makes that argument. So you need to couple tariffs with other ways in order to create a comparative cost advantage.
I agree with that. I don't think ultimately all of the costs are borne by the person importing the product, in that the manufacturer, to stay competitive, can lower the costs that they actually sell the product for. So there is a give and take and an equilibrium that will be reached. And it's not going to be 100% is paid by whoever wants to import that product. There's going to be some from the exporting manufacturer that in order to stay competitive, they're going to have to lower how much they're actually retailing that product.
Can happen.
Walmart, with CNBC was discussing this a lot. Walmart's putting a lot of pressure on their supply chain, and because they sell $650 billion worth of product, they have a lot of pressure to apply.
Yeah.
Shall we talk in the context of the AEC industry then? So, Skanska. Well, actually, let's go back to the tariff. So there was a tariff of 25% on aluminum and steel, which has now gone up to, in the last few days, 50%. So just some facts about US and where it gets its material from. It's the biggest importer of steel in the world after the European Union, and it gets most of its metal from Canada, Brazil, Mexico, and South Korea. Did you know that? I guess not.
Is it the biggest importer of steel?
Yeah.
Oh, importer. Sorry, I thought it was okay. Importer, probably yes. Yeah.
And obviously, steel and aluminum are quite a significant chunk of what goes into our buildings. So there'll be a wide cost implication of projects. And I have on one of my notes here that ultimately it'll be the consumers that feel the pinch. So to Skanska's report, they just released a spring 2025 construction market trends. And with the 25% tariffs, they came out with cost increases on projects from roughly 5 to 15% overall, with steel prices to be up by 12% since January 2025, and aluminium prices rising 6.5% year over year. And Dodge Construction Network data further illustrated the impact, noting that rebar costs, or reinforcement bars, had soared by more than 26% due to earlier tariffs, which had added roughly, on average, $14,000 to the cost of constructing a typical single-family home. So yeah, on the basis that these are now doubled, I guess construction costs up, and away we go.
There's no way around it, I think.
Hold on, what do you mean there's no way around it? Sorry, I mean, Martin, you're fanboying tariffs here. Sorry, I mean, you said earlier they seem to be working. Sorry, how do those two statements go together?
I'm no way around it in terms of what the administration said they've done, and unless you will turn the decision back somehow, there's no way around it. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no way around it working so well, right? That's what you're saying.
I mean, there's not a lot to say on that, I suppose. But in addition, 68% of builders reported project delays directly attributable to supplier renegotiations triggered by the tariffs. Interesting.
But I think it's all just to boost production internally within the country. And what's the other way to do it? I don't know. I'm not a citizen of the US, so I kind of look at this from the outside. But
Well, I can tell you, Cleveland Cliffs stock is up 25% in 5 days. So people think that we are going to boost manufacturing. At least the stock market's betting we are.
That one was supposed to go down, actually. Stock market.
No. I mean, some stocks benefit, some stocks don't.
So I guess, yeah.
I'm not surprised 68% of contractors are reporting a delay right now. I think you're going to see that number continue to escalate, because the unfortunate problem when you're trying to go through pre-construction is pre-construction can last so long. The project that you price, by the time you actually get to finalized designs, the price is no longer no one's holding that price consistent. So then you have additional value engineering you need to go through. And then it's an iterative cycle that as you take time to go through value engineering, price again goes up, and then you need to do more value engineering.
So that's exactly why you will have less projects started.
Yes, there's a systemic effect here, which is to the administration credit why they are also saying, hey, Fed, simultaneously lower interest rates because we're raising input costs, and the borrowing costs need to come down to keep equilibrium.
And
because most projects are financed through borrowing. And so you can have the input costs go up and the borrowing costs go down. And for similar type projects, they're still feasible.
To that point, I'm curious if anyone here has had conversations with any contractors that are already doing these projects whereby they're fixed into prices or fixed into contract values, which they've agreed to, handshakes with their customers, at which they can, I don't know if this is a bit extreme, but not deliver on, or which ultimately will affect their margin on a project.
So you will already see that in the market in projects that are where the ROI is either extremely high and that additional let's say margin, the developer is happy to eat it because the project is so overwhelmingly positive. Maybe data centers could be an example that people think of like that. Or you will do it in projects where the ROI is completely irrelevant and you build the project for strategic reasons. So think, for example, Department of Defense type projects. In projects that need to deliver a traditional, whatever, 7 to 15% IRR business case, they will plummet as long as this is ongoing because it doesn't matter. Nobody, no side, neither the developer owner nor the contractor wants to take that hedging risk.
And the other interesting component is housing is actually coming down. So the expected IRR in many of these development projects, multifamily, is becoming lower, which is quite shocking. And so a lot of these projects that might have been feasible the outcome looks bleak.
Yeah.
Housing is going down because, sorry, Patrick, go on.
No, go on, Martin. I was pivoting.
So is it because there is a projection for the rates not to go lower and stay at the same levels, or that would be probably the reason?
So I can't remember if it was Redfin or Zillow, but it's the biggest disequilibrium that we've seen in a long time between the number of people selling and the number of buyers in the market, because the borrowing costs are quite high with the they're not relatively in the last 5 years. Borrowing costs are high because interest rates are high relative to 5 years. However, historically they're not high. So a lot of people are sitting on the sideline as buyers, and there is a lot of people looking to liquidate their homes. Not liquidate's the wrong word, but sell their homes. And so there's not enough buyers in the market to meet the supply of the real estate market. We're seeing that come down. I think I do think the freeze in border crossings does affect this a little bit, which is not talked about. We went from having 200,000 people a month come across the border to zero. Now, people would say, well, they're not going and competing with market rate rents. That's true, but they are filling some dwellings, and that can push people into other dwellings. And without that continued push and people actually net migration out, can also open up supply in the market and give people more optionality, which I've not heard anyone talk about. But it just seems like a logical conclusion based upon what we saw immigration at prior to the new administration, where immigration is now today. That would just be me extrapolating kind of a couple things. What do you guys think?
No, I agree. Actually, a smaller supply of newcomers to the country will.
No, it's actually a net immigration out.
Okay. Yeah, so that clearly is going to decrease.
So you're saying more people out, Dustin?
Yeah.
More people actually left the country than immigrated.
This to the AEC space, as that's what we talk about. A lot of people were worried about this immigration clampdown because a lot of the people on site or a lot of the builders and people using the trades actually rely on this labor, which is I don't know if the right term is illegal, but perhaps not here on like official terms, or perhaps not in the US on official terms, and it helps keep the cost of construction down. However, if those people are no longer available and the wage prices go up, then again, the costs of construction work will also increase.
I actually think that is much more on the residential construction market than in the commercial construction that's going to be affected by this supply of labor. And then you'd have to go, which trades are we talking about? But certainly on the residential market, there is a lot of labor that probably isn't here legally. But once you start dealing with some of the larger projects, they're being employed by sophisticated companies that aren't necessarily doing questionable labor practices.
Construction labor, what I've seen over the years, always migrates towards large portfolios of demand. So they always, the labor always in the end streams to large accounts large projects in large regions, and it's always the ones that have a one-time project of a small volume that lose the labor first. It's because it makes sense. I mean, the skilled workers, they also want predictability of their own earnings and their lifestyle, and working 18 months on one project in one city is favorable over, a 4 weeks gig with a customer that might not have a follow-on. So that's why labor migrates there.
Mhm. Also, we spoke on a podcast probably like a month and a half ago now with two contractors, and they said that orders from Canada that they had the place with Canadian companies, they are just no going anymore. So Canadian just refused to sell to the US. Is it still the case?
Can you just clarify, Martin, in that example, in that anecdote, was it Canadian GCs that had to bid in the US, or was it Canadian owners, developers that wanted American GCs?
Canadian manufacturers. That was about facade in one of the cases. I can't
Okay.
remember the other case. Facade manufacturer in Canada refused to sell to the US general contractor. Was not interested anymore.
Hmm. I mean, were they like, were they saying it like tongue in cheek? Because I'm sure if there's a big enough order, then they wouldn't be turning that down.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Not
You
everything
seem
is
very
money,
confident.
Owen.
Huh?
Not
You seem very
everything
confident.
revolves around money.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're opening up the discussion. Hey, but like, okay, so if you're a supplier, let's break this down. If you're a supplier and there's a country that you don't want to do business with, but they come at you and potentially offer you a, I don't want to say life-changing order, but a business-changing order with a big outcome, are you going to say no?
I think
Well,
there was a little bit ego playing. I don't know if there was any internal rules within Canada to like enhance internal selling of products and goods, and perhaps some disincentives when selling to American markets. But I don't know. It feels like it was a little bit egoistic as well,
well, there
ego
can be
driven.
Mm.
some internal factors that play into that, and we've talked about it before. If you already have a full manufacturing order, why would you want to spike just to satisfy one customer, where that's going to immediately have you either expand your capabilities past what you know is consistent unnaturally? So it could be tongue in cheek because they also just don't want to take on the additional volume unless it's going to be part of their natural, consistent work uh, book of business.
I agree with that. I think a ton of it is context.
Yeah.
True.
When someone is underutilized, I would agree. I mean, that takes a hell of a lot of hazardous behavior to basically decline a big order to utilize your factory. And then the other one might be, look, there's propaganda everywhere, guys. Some people spin stories and anecdotes also to ridiculous degrees. So
That's
it's
true.
all
But
context.
that was from people we spoke with, not from media.
Not
No,
from
I
the Twitter
understand. But
feed.
if you want to
Maybe
make a point, sometimes you add a little bit around the edges or you leave out context, right? So everything is context.
On labor, uh, in the Skanska report, so construction unemployment rate edged down. These are just some key takeaways on the subject of construction and labor. Unemployment rate edged down to 5.9% in Q1 25, reflecting sustained demand for skilled labor despite ongoing workforce shortages. Wage growth for key trades such as electrical, mechanical, and steel fabrication has accelerated, with average increases of 4 to 6% year on year. And obviously, we all know about the current stat, roughly 400,000 new workers short in 2025 to meet demand for construction projects. Um,
That seems counterintuitive because 5.9% is not a fully employed labor market.
hmm.
They're saying there's 400,000 shortages. That if we got to 4%, which seems like a full employed labor market, then 1.9% would be somewhere in the ballpark of 400,000 people.
Hold on, I didn't quite catch that. Was the 5.9% on construction-related jobs, or was it overall economy?
That was
Construction.
on construction.
Mm.
I was surprised it said 5.9%, and then they're saying
Yeah.
they're 400,000 labor shortage. 1.9% seems like 400,000 of the construction labor market. If you got to 4% and said that's a full market.
Mm.
To write to Skanska and inquire further.
Let's rough ballpark. There's 30 million people that work in the construction trades.
Mhm.
1% is 300,000. So 2% would more than fill the gap if we just pulled from our current labor market. If they're saying 5.9% unemployment.
Mm. Yeah. We'll file a complaint. So
I don't know if
but-
then maybe they consider 6% a fully employed labor market.
But then, to the point down here, Dustin, it says anywhere between 250 to 500,000. That's quite a broad gap, broad range.
Well, I mean, again, I think you have to look at it in trades. I think that there's probably a shortage of skilled electricians right now.
Yeah,
If you took-
electrical,
if you took
mechanical,
the
steel
left-
fabrication.
Exactly. It takes a long time to become a seasoned
Electrician.
welder. An electrician. Anyone ever done
Yeah.
any welding? It's hard. It's not easy.
Don't plan to. I've done DIY.
But on the other hand, I just came back from the US and I was hearing that there's lots of layoffs happening in the white collar world. I don't know if not in construction in the particular context I'm talking about. But any thoughts on construction? How is it
In the
happening
white
there?
collar construction world,
White collar construction.
I haven't seen anything myself. No. I mean, why
I'm
would
hearing more anecdotally from customers that the largest ones are doing very well. And then there are regions where the mid-market GCs, some of them are suffering with work.
Mm-hmm. In residential, commercial type of work?
Commercial.
Commercial.
But look, let's just bring that point home from earlier, because you're mentioning who's suffering, Dustin, right? The suffering isn't even seen yet among the GCs, because what will happen is that all those fixed price offers or guaranteed maximum price offers that you gave a year or two ago that are now moving into material procurement, those are the projects that will be underwater. So you're actually going to feel that impact in a year, 2 and 3 years from now. That's exactly what happened in 22, 23 after the COVID
100%
supply
correct.
chain. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where qualifying your subcontractors and knowing what orders they've locked in, because if they didn't secure their procurement as part of their quote and lock in that price, which most of them don't do, they submit a number and then they have a quote from their vendor and they don't actually sign the contract with them or secure the material, then you're going to see this is where defaults start happening, and this is where
and
subcontractors
very
get in
few
trouble.
of them will do that, like you say, and then inventories are typically hated. They like to have none of that complexity, etc. And the working capital aspect of it obviously is also something that is in that cash flow strapped industry. Just you can't do it for a year or two. It's just no one does that. So who benefits in the end is the material producer.
So the question is,
Well, there's another benefit. Another person's going to benefit. Private equity is going to swallow up a lot of these small businesses because they can be highly cash flow profitable, but then when they have these downturns, they can be acquired extremely cheaply.
So the question is when these more painful times are going to come, and also every market participant will be kind of affected, or it will just touch certain type of companies, because that the answer to that will then dictate how bad it is in construction or not.
So the ones, let me give you two perhaps that I would be, if I was a shareholder in any of those traditional construction related businesses, I would be more relaxed. One is the ones serving infrastructure. because typically in times of these, at some point, the state will step in even more. I mean,
Yeah.
the US has spent a good amount on infrastructure the last 4 or 5 years. I expect it to continue to do so, quite honestly. And as that stress increases the way we all seem to expect it to increase, I think that step up will happen even more. The state steps in to save construction. It like history teaches us that. And then
Because
the
it's a very effective way to distribute funds to a huge consumer base. It's a
Yes.
very
Boosting of the demand for the very broad spectrum of people.
Yeah, and I just hope that that infrastructure is going to get defined in the traditional way and not in the, oh, let's build more data centers kind of a way. I'm not against data centers, but it's, again, the timeless piece that is proven time and time again: highways, bridges, generally logistics infrastructure, etc. That's a super effective way to do it, without any trendy aspects to it. And then the other one, just to mention it, restoration businesses. So I used to joke with my colleagues here. There's 4 events in life where you don't meet any price sensitivity from the customer. Births,
Baby.
so exactly, you know exactly where I'm going. Wedding, funeral, and a restoration of your home after a flooding or a fire. That's the 4 events where you basically meet no price sensitivity, and it always happens regardless of if there's a recession or not.
And company exit, you have to add.
I don't know if that's true, actually. Though I know very, very screwgy founders even after exit. So
Smart people, smart people. No, I completely agree with that.
Hey,
I was thinking if I wanted to share a story or not.
yeah.
How much did you spend? Just tell me.
That night, like 15,000 when we closed.
Not that much.
No, literally.
but I guess you have good memory though of that night.
What I remember.
Yeah, and that was
Hey,
shall
we do that thing which Martin suggested, where we hear the story and just beep it?
Just be, you would be
Beep
like,
everything.
Okay. To the earlier point, here we go. This will excite Martin and Dustin, I think, from the Skanska report. Well, perhaps not verbatim, but a key takeaway here. Domestic suppliers, this is US, domestic suppliers report increased demand as owners and builders seek to mitigate global supply chain risks, putting additional strain on US-based manufacturing capacity.
That's a good thing, right? I would love that strain of additional need for additional capacity.
There we go. So, shall we go through some other quick
What
takeaways here?
I'm trying to connect the dots with regarding UK, for example, right now, because it's really like an on and off market right now for the last 2-3 weeks. And I don't know what happened, actually. I've not been looking at media much in terms of like domestic affairs in economy, but it's been booming left, right, and center. And the amount of inquiries about engineering, at least, is just out of this world.
really?
And I remember maybe 2 months ago, we were chatting, Patrick, I think, with you, and it was very doom and gloom kind of situation. So I don't know. Usually, start of the year is very booming. Right now we are in June, so some people should be on holidays. Some people should be just doing their projects. So in the middle, but not thinking about starting, about getting engineering. So, any thoughts here? What's going on? And how does this relate perhaps to the German bazooka situation and what's happening in the US?
I see pure optimism all over the market, quite honestly. The markets that we cover, except maybe for the US. But look, Dustin, you allow me to say this. In general, US society and US population are optimists,
Yes.
right? So
100%.
right? So I don't expect even that to last, quite honestly. You know, in the end, American society figures things out. That's what they do. They're problem solvers. They're optimists. They're get shit done kind of a people. So even there and across the other markets, quite honestly, I see a lot of optimism. Germany and India among the furthest optimistic one. For Germans, that means a lot. I mean, Germans, to be optimistic, you basically just won the lottery. But um,
Oh
no,
boy,
I
So you
got
guys,
it right.
Germans are pessimists, but get shit done kind of people.
maybe. Yeah,
No?
Yeah.
I definitely not optimist. I
This
would
way,
agree.
this way.
Yeah. No, no. And also the startups serving these markets in inside outside the portfolio, they are meeting solid, robust demand currently.
Hmm.
I think
Interesting
the
why.
US is just so unique in our capitalistic structure. It just allows us to weather even pessimistic times because we're constantly creating and recreating businesses and constantly seeing growth and innovation.
Mhm.
I just wish politicians didn't take it for granted so much.
Hmm.
'Cause I feel like, I don't know, I feel like they're so detached from what it takes to build these things that all they do is focus on the negatives that happen, where by and large, this constant influx of new businesses creating and developing, and some winning, some losing, is what makes the US market so great.
So you're saying that U.S. businesses are, you mentioned the word weather, resilient, and Patrick, you operate in
No, the
both
US
U.S.
economy is resilient. Individual
Okay,
businesses can
okay.
be resilient or not.
Hmm. Well,
We just get
because
so
that's
optimistic, we leverage ourselves to death.
yeah. Well, you guys have dollar, you guys have uh, treasuries, U.S. treasuries. That's why you know that you will be resistant to things. I think on the global scale. That's
Which is why it might not be the smartest idea to float publicly on your personal social media platform. Hey, maybe we should just default on our state debt. If you want people to buy US dollars, that might not be the best idea. But perhaps you don't want them to buy US dollars anymore. Then maybe it's a good idea.
It's
I would agree. I was just trying to find an article. You were talking about the real estate market in the US. I was trying to find an article that I saw earlier, which I'm sure it said that it was booming in the UK. However, I can't.
High Street
Not
in New
really. Sorry,
York.
I mean housing, not real estate. But when I was searching, I couldn't find the story. But when I was searching, maybe this relates to your point, Patrick, a little bit. Trump media seeks to launch Truth Social Bitcoin ETF.
But that's been Bitcoin ETF has been for since February 2024, I think. So that's
Yeah.
old news.
Well, it
Yeah.
actually
It's
says
like 10 of them.
47 minutes ago.
Oh,
That's a separate point. But yeah,
mhm.
okay.
Yeah. High Street in New
Okay.
York is very bad, actually. Looking at shops, and there's so many closed shops, which I was surprised by.
Hmm.
Um,
Guys,
so
can we talk some technology?
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, let's do
Switching to
that. I'm
tech.
glad you said it. Um, okay, Patrick, what is going on with forward deployed engineers?
Ah, I'm
Can
glad
you
you asked.
yeah lay the seed?
Yeah. Um, I actually have a question for you all. So I have a question whether you're personally seeing, or if you're not seeing, what is your opinion on the AEC market, architecture, engineering, and construction? Is it going to buy more and more software that will be forward deployed? Forward deployed in the sense that, and I'll attribute it to Palantir here. I don't know if that's the original attribution, but it's the one that at least stuck the most with me over the years. Is where in the Palantir model, Palantir has a very core software stack, which also includes what they call an ontology. That's their term, not mine, but basically a way to describe data structures and the handling of set structures. But not every customer needs exactly that form of the platform, of the stack. Um, but it can be repurposed to solve various automation tasks and analytics tasks for large Fortune 500 customers and government customers across the spectrum, right? And so that same logic could be applied if you think about it, and perhaps you guys are already seeing it, hint, hint, to AEC customers who desire to update their entire technology stack, including their own ontology. Perhaps they don't even have one. Uh, Phrasing it suggestive. So my question is, do you guys already see that? Do you guys believe in that as a motion for AEC customers and as software suppliers?
I think for sure, because industry is super fragmented and every general contractor works in a different way. And uh, thinking that there is one solution that helps with one particular vertical within the business, within throughout the whole industry, it's not happen. I'm pretty sure it's not the case. So the answer is yes. I think it will be more and more kind of consultancy type of software solution. So you plug in your software, but there is a need to spend some time to adjust it to customers' needs as they want, rather than have off-shelf platform that solves everything for everyone.
I think that the constituents in the market that would lean towards solutions like this actually have a lot of these in-house. So the first part of the market that might gravitate towards a Palantir type approach would be the EPC contractors, where they're in charge of engineering, procurement, and construction. And if, like Bechtel, for example, in the early 2000s, started developing a lot of very proprietary systems for their unique types of work because there wasn't solutions type like Palantir. But as you get more and more downstream, companies can't afford the huge capital investment that a company like Palantir would require, or a company like Oracle or SAP. And I think like whether you call them forward engineers, it's not dissimilar from the Salesforce model where you get Salesforce out of the box and it's complete shit. And then you hire a Salesforce consultant, they charge you an arm and a leg, and then it's still shit. Then you get someone that's actually good in RevOps and they make it work. And then it's actually great. So that's the standard operating procedure for deploying Salesforce. You buy shit, you get shit from a vendor, and then you make it work.
What's the reason? Is it because technology is so complex, or the requirements are so complex?
Well, Salesforce has built the right topology to support a go-to-market function for any market, but you have to configure the components to map to what you are trying to do. And I'll give you an example. If you're doing a consumer software or software business or whatever type of business, that is very, very different than if you are a new company and a new SaaS company targeting the AEC. The hierarchy of how you'd manage accounts is quite a bit different. How would you manage leads is quite a bit different. Like, for example, at Building Connected, our topology was we wouldn't track just a construction company as an account. At Building Connected, we would sell to individual offices. And so there was a parent-child relationship between, like, Turner Construction had 42 offices at the time across the United States. So there was a parent for Turner, but every single office, and actually within that office, they had two different divisions typically. One was ground up and one was interiors. So we even bifurcated those. So in order to get Salesforce optimized for you, you have to structure it correctly for the accounts based upon what is the atomic structure of their buying process. So if the office or the division can make the purchase, then that needs to be your atomic structure, and then you build up. And these are things you learn over time. Most companies at the time actually made a lot of bad mistakes. And now most of the SaaS companies realize this is how you have to do it for the AEC space, which is understand their offices and their divisions in order to understand what's the atomic structure they can actually purchase it for.
I mean, there's a fun fact. The market cap of Salesforce, the market size for Salesforce implementation consultants is the same size as the market cap for Salesforce, roughly.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it goes against mine. If you last week, I was WhatsApping you on the weekend, and we were talking a similar thing here, where we say like technology is meant to improve people's lives and whatnot. And
Yeah.
and I always say that actually it ends up creating more jobs and more friction than without it.
So to that point, are we observing construction customers who have noticed that and who want to eliminate more and more point solutions in their stack,
Yes.
hundreds of solutions, and now they would be prone to going to Edify, sorry, Dustin, I'm using you as
That's
an
fine.
example,
We
which
have
is a
customers.
system of record, which is a workflow platform. That's how, to at least two monikers I would, from the outside in, attach to Edify, and now say, hey, can you please also around that build custom integrations, custom automations for me, and perhaps ingest more and more of the things that we're doing around it that hopefully we then don't need to do with another software anymore.
So maybe the like a notion of startup, it's not for construction, not coined for construction, because it seems like it's
Yeah,
not going to be platform that you just plug in and for most of the use cases, which are like worth looking into, have much more broader scope than just point solutions. Maybe it's not a startup word; it's kind of startup slash consulting
yeah, because
business.
because I think what you're saying, Martin, is how do you actually build a scalable business if every time you win a
Yeah,
customer, you have to wedge your, or not even like more, you have to customize the solution so much that you effectively do become a consultancy for this customer, but you have software attached.
unless you have a point solution, that is different. But
Well, there's a variety of businesses that do this, and this is what the channel actually is for many software companies. Autodesk has an incredible sales distribution channel, and then they handle the sales channel handles all the deployment and the configuration. So it exists. The vendors are out there. I do think more software companies will actually take it on. So the customers we're dealing with will take it on. Traditionally, a lot of the larger GCs have liked to do their own integrations in house. Honestly, we could do it more cost effectively than any GC absolutely could. For what we
Mm-hmm.
could do, we'll probably be able to do it for 50% the cost or 30% the cost of what a contractor would have to do, where they're starting to employ full-time people. We can distribute that cost amongst several clients.
100% agreed. And on the cost argument of it being consulting, see that's a heuristic that I think is omitting the first principle. So when I look at these kinds of businesses, I ask myself, okay, what is the average order value on something like that? What is the cash flow on a project like that? Because when you actually have a high AOV and you have upfront cash paid for such an, let's say, customization or implementation type of a project, you might actually make the customers pay your growth. And so then it all of a sudden becomes basically a recovery of your CAC. And if you then leave a software in place that is recurring, you just have made one of the best sales channels and sales motions that you could dream of. So when you start thinking of now, when you don't leave a recurring business, that's when it then starts becoming a little bit different. When you don't leave, or when you don't get high AOV, very different.
what
When
is
you don't
AOV?
get
Sorry.
up average order value.
Okay.
When you don't get cash down payment, you also have to make it work from a person, because then personnel cost is your working capital, and that can then be highly intensive if you can't structure that way. So these are at the very least three components that you need to get right if you want to do such a motion. But if you do, you become a cash flow engine, you become a distribution engine, and that can actually be really good. And that's what I mean. Look, Palantir. I have a construction customer that for whom Palantir was supposed to do an ontology project on top of Palantir Foundry for a specific type of infrastructure project, mega project. We're talking billions of infrastructure in that specific project. Was fired, had a budget of several million in
I
that,
heard about this.
right? So I'm not saying any startup will be able to charge that kind of an AOV for one project in the next few years without the track record and the Foundry backbone that Palantir clearly can claim to have. But it doesn't have to be millions. It can be hundreds of thousands and still be very profitable to that degree.
I think also the difference between Palantir and a startup is this Palantir, I don't know, mostly it's probably too much said, but they sell a lot to like nation states and to like
Part
a
of the customer
government
base.
type of entities.
Yeah,
So
cities, municipalities,
yeah, so it's
departments.
a different way of charging. Well, cities, municipalities probably not, but governments, I think, and they are the only shop on the market really. Yeah? In their case, so they can charge a lot.
Yep, certainly. I think we're already. I think we're already seeing in my network, at the very least, anecdotally, a number of customers who actually have taken the decision to revamp their stack, and that is both on the AE side as well as on the construction side. A little bit earlier, a little bit further ahead on the AE side, because there's also clearly just market dynamics, which I refuse to mention for not being wanted to litigate against, but clearly also due to market dynamics of certain suppliers who are changing the rates, who are changing their distribution system, who are perhaps liking a tokenized model a little bit more than a seat-based pricing, etc. But even on the construction side, I anecdotally have in my network heads of procurement and heads of IT who told me in the last few months, I'm stopping purchasing software, and my next project is figuring out how to completely rebuild our software stack and reduce the number of point solutions that I have to as little as possible and maximize automation potential without having to be dependent on 100 different software vendors. That's happening, guys. That's happening.
Yeah,
So-
I
so
would 100% agree, Patrick. Same conversations I've been having. You
So
you
that's on
mentioned
the-
2 points.
I
Reducing the
think
software stack.
problem, well, I want to call these
Everyone's here.
companies out actually, because the problem is then
Let's
they
beep
make,
something out.
no, I'm going to heat something up. Those CIOs that are saying, hey, I want to eliminate all my point solutions, they will inevitably go with one large company and end up with a crappy tech stack.
I
It'll be-
agree. I have these CIOs too who will purchase SAP and
Yeah,
never think that some 100%.
SAP Oracle. It's like, oh, great.
100%.
Yeah,
Also,
plus then you end up
too
stuck with these
extreme.
companies, huh? If you end up putting everything in there, then they effectively own you, these companies. If like all your data is on a large operating software,
Although that's a
something-
company I would actually want to back. Sorry, Owen, I want to interject there. Please, someone build a company that uses LLMs to logic mine a construction business and logic mine all of the code base and build the best ERP migrator. You might just kill the ERPs just by
Ha.
doing the migration service in a better way. Or kill Accenture. Actually, is the better. You wouldn't kill SAP. You would kill Accenture. Sorry, Owen, just to interject.
Yeah. No, just saying, some people, we were having discussions, lots of bricks and bytes about more consolidation of the software stack, so less solutions. However, someone really did counter our logic, and maybe this is where the discussion goes, whereby they were saying, well, less software providers that you have, your risk actually not increases, but you become more reliant on one, and then that person owns all of your data. And then what happens when you want to move, to Patrick's point, and what happens if they get into trouble or
They
they end up
go
being
bust.
acquired perhaps by a larger incumbent? What happens then? So they do actually like to hedge their risk. And
But that's
go
no
too
different to the
extreme.
situation they have today. They have that exact situation just in 100 fragmented places because for every feature they have exactly one software implemented.
So what's the
Yeah.
solution?
No, but this does diversify them. They have lots of different point solutions. My question is, Patrick, to you actually. What about founders? So to put it in a simple terms, so that I understand it as well. Well, are we talking about construction technology software that is backed up by kind of consultancy model to it? In a simple way.
So I think it loses nuance when you say it's backed up by the consultancy model. But yes, I am speaking about bathtubs, so systems of record, ERP type solutions, authoring solutions, workflow automation platforms that offer a forward deployed engineered motion, on top of which they also offer custom integrations and custom automations, and they go use case by use case. They gain the trust of the customer, and the customer says, can we now tackle the next thing? Now, if you screw up, the customer doesn't trust you, then this motion ends very, very quickly. But if the customer actually trusts that you are delivering the automations you're promising, you're delivering the ontology that you're promising, and you work very well with their teams, I'm starting to see that work in 2 or 3 companies that I'm following closely. And that leads to a very deep integration and a very deep penetration of those accounts.
What about then founders on the other side of this equation? Are they building this type of businesses, or they are focused more on SaaS only businesses?
Well, it's a key element of SaaS is like fees for implementation. No? So
Yes, but if it's very complex, long, then it is consultancy with a software.
No,
That's what it is.
I would disagree with that.
Software with
Yeah.
consultancy, whichever you put first.
No, I
it's
think you're
just
disregarding.
implementation.
Dustin,
I-
before you go, I just want to clarify one thing, Martin. I think you're missing the point of the repeatability in the technology. So Palantir wouldn't work without the Foundry platform. So the
Mhm.
point is, let me just explain again how Palantir, in the end, in hindsight, now that we all know the story better, right, works. You're from the forward deployed engineering organization. You're constantly seeing new hacky types of automations, and you're basically your back channel team, your Foundry team over time gets to identify the stuff that is worth repeating across multiple clients. And then you can make a technology choice to embed it into Foundry and abstract it to such a level that it becomes very repeatable for the next forward deployed engineering team at the next customer. So I do not agree with your notion that this is consulting that is unrepeatable. This is a highly repeatable technology play. It's just that the distribution of it is through forward deployed engineers. Sorry,
Okay.
Dustin.
Sorry. So are the founders thinking about it this way?
I'm meeting a few now.
Hey, maybe the question should be, Martin, has that thinking shifted? Like, has it been a more less of like a like? Have you seen an uptick, Patrick? I mean, I think maybe you've already answered the question. Yeah, like
Yeah.
where before they
Yeah.
weren't thinking
Also,
this
since
way.
we
But
discussed outcomes as a service more than SaaS, I think that was sort of the first trigger in that direction. And I do think that customers actually play a big role here. I think, in the end, demand shapes supply. And so when customers start asking more and more for, hey, can we actually eliminate stuff? Can we actually rethink my entire stack? Are you able to customize software? Founders take notice. I do see an uptick there. But curious, Dustin, what you are thinking and seeing.
Yeah, let's ask the founder.
So, one, I think a lot of VCs actually are scared for companies to have any sort of service revenues associated with them, especially the early stage investors, because they don't actually understand how you should value that component of a business. And what you are saying, Patrick, is absolutely spot on. This is a way to become more deeply embedded. If you can do it, a way to become more deeply embedded with your customers, build a level of trust, increase your ARR and ACV over time, but it makes your software almost indispensable if you are also working on all of the configuration to work with whatever other solutions that there are. Most software companies um, aren't able to actually charge for these things initially, and so it takes a level of maturity before you can ever really operate through an implementation and service fee where you can get enough money back to start covering these charges and even make profit. So it is where a lot of SaaS companies should go if they can. So we're going to be doing more and more of this as we are becoming the cost system of record. That cost needs to flow, and while I'd like to have out of the box integrations with most of these providers, there is some nuance for many providers, and especially with the ERPs, and we're more than willing to take on those.
can I ask you guys a question?
But I think where this is going to become a lot more systemic is actually as companies are looking at AI solutions, they want the model only trained on their proprietary information. So
Agreed.
that model is much more in tune to what Palantir is doing. Companies will have out of the box models, and then they'll need their engineers to work on that data set to train the model specific to that organization so that that model functions for that company, and it's a deviation from what their off the shelf product is.
The question is the problems that these companies are solving. Are they worth it? The money and time to implement these technologies?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for enterprise contractors, for very large AE firms, I think you will find so many automation potentials, applications for which point solutions today are in use that, yeah, I think you're actually going to create a very large market size for yourself.
To round this discussion off and to reinforce one of the points, it's a little bit of an open question, so you guys will need to interpret it how you feel. But I was having a recent conversation with, just say, a vice president of technology of a roughly 20 billion US general contractor, and they said that they are now approaching startups with more of a partnership mentality.
Roughly
I
20
couldn't
billion. That
quite.
is probably okay. Go on.
I'm trying to interpret what exactly they meant by that. But what do you guys think, Martin? You sound like you were going to speak first.
No, sorry, I was just trying to figure out who that was.
All I'm thinking is, so previously you didn't want to be a partner. So, like, what's the news here? I mean, sorry, do you have more context? Because without
I can
context,
give
it
you some
feels like
context.
so previously you screwed them over, or like, huh?
Yeah, I think that what they were saying was that they no longer want to be sold to as a company, but they want to partner with companies whereby the technology is actually more customized to their use case versus an out of the box
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah, that goes in that direction, no?
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought it was strange that they were saying that, because perhaps they have been stung in the past, or perhaps they felt that they were like literally being sold to and were not getting good outcomes.
Yeah, that I believe.
And it also goes to the point that every large organization is different in the way they deal with things, and probably simply can't apply off-shelf solution to a very specific type of organization and a problem that they need the solution for.
Okay, shall we move on? I'm curious. What is your guys' current working routine? How many
Current-
hours per day are you working?
Working
Dustin.
or working out?
56 minutes today, someone.
Dustin, let's start with you.
So I think people, I know where this conversation's going. I think we need to bifurcate it into the founders and what they sign up for in running a company and what you should expect from your ICs, your individual contributors. And so, me as a founder, um, two-time founder, three-time CEO, when I sign up for this role, I sign up for this, and I realize some people have family. I do not. I sign up for this to be the top priority in my life,
Mhm.
which means while I might not be behind the keyboard, there's very few times where my mind is truly disconnected from thinking about the business. And so I was telling the team before this call, I did a 6 mile run today. Most of that 6 mile run, I was actually thinking about Edify and some optimizations we need to make. I don't even listen to music. It's just me in my head playing the tape forward on what we can do. So while time behind the keyboard or time in meetings is substantial, I think that there is tremendous value when the founder is also thinking about what are the next steps this business needs to take and thinking about the future and extrapolating what you can do. So I don't, I do think that for each person, and now I'll get personal, there is a limit to what you can put in. And with building connected, I actually hit my limit physically. I developed AFib. I had to have my heart stopped and reset. And that's not good when
Wow.
you're 35 years old.
Mm.
And that's because I didn't have a way to alleviate the stress and I was constantly obsessing. So any founder, any VC that's saying the founder should do, I don't know what the number was, but 11,
996.
9 to 9, 6 days a week.
No,
I would question,
996 hours a day.
I would question if that VC has ever worked a real 40-hour week.
I agree.
I would love to sit down with them and to have them show me what
Can
their
we say
40
who that
hours.
is?
They tweeted that from Burning Man or whatever conference
Yeah.
they currently attend.
As they do ketamine and acid, whatever. I mean, most
Yeah.
people like to say hyperbole stuff and they have no idea the stress under. Most founders have no liquid capital and they're actually struggling to make ends meet in their life. So a real VC would say you need to do whatever makes you most effective because it's not about the number of hours you spend. It's about the number of hours versus how valuable those hours were multiplies your work product output. And I know people that are highly effective and can work, 6-hour tranches and produce more in one day than you'd see out of people in 3 or 4 days. But
Mm-hmm.
then they have to like completely detach. I actually practice more of a consistent, always
Hmm.
thinking about it, putting in work on Saturdays and Sundays, rather than on a day try to do 10 or 12 hours.
Mhm.
That's me. And it took a long time to realize that was my preferred operating mode. And to say that you should be doing something, no, it is very personal on what those individuals should do. And the most important thing actually is protecting your mental health along the way. Because what good are you if
If you, yeah, if you can't cope.
exactly?
Yeah.
Mm.
But anyone who says it's idiot.
Can I
You can
just
quote
do?
me on that, and I don't know who it is, but they're an idiot.
Do you know where this come from? I just done a quick Google because mine said, "Can we see who the VC was?" This is actually the 996 working hour system. Is an official thing. It's a work schedule practiced illegally by some companies in China.
Not a VC.
Well, I'm guessing like it started from there, right? And then
Mm.
they're now tweeting about it.
Oh, it's a hot topic right now in among venture, and it was initiated by some VCs in Silicon Valley, and now European VCs, 28-year-olds pick it up and
But do
try to
they
make it.
agree or they kind of ridicule
Yeah. They
it?
say, you're not ambitious enough, you're not hardworking enough. If you can't do 996, you can't build a maximalist company that way. Okay, so here's first of all to your question, Owen, I'll give you my routine. Dustin, I'm fairly close to yours. So I do have like a core working hour type
Mhm.
routine. I like to start 8:30, 8:45, 9 a.m., somewhere around that. I try to get a 30 to 45-minute workout in before. Works 5, 6 days a week, doesn't work always. And then typically I end the day at like 7 p.m., something like that. I do work almost every Saturday for exactly the same time as well. And then Sundays, like, do we count phone calls? Do we count emails? I don't. It doesn't even register on my scale. You know
Right.
what I mean? And that is because if you're a business owner, like all of us are business owners, if you're a business owner anyway, you constantly, like in my holiday, do you really think I have a day where I don't think about my business? No, but it doesn't even register on this on the stress scale. Like that's just something that you do. Um, Especially I think when you really like what you're doing and it's something that is a passion for you and
Yeah.
etc. My parents were both traditional entrepreneurs. My father was a small business owner that he started. My mom started as a small business owner and sold as a larger business owner, and both of them all the time had business on their mind. All the time. There was not a day on, that's just what it is being a business owner. Now,
Hmm.
personally, I think when a VC, and I'm going to critique here, especially the VCs pushing this narrative in the last 7 to 14 days a lot, this is actually the VC's problem. And I'll tell you
Yeah.
why I think that is. If you need your founders to work 996 to succeed, you know what
You
you
had.
invested in? You invested in a completely indefensible, obvious business that you can only whip the leash behind people working for you
Mhm.
in order to make some kind of hustle effort to outperform everybody else. You know what you should have invested in? Into a less obvious, more optionality and more defensible kind of business. That's one. And two, Dustin, I subscribe to your formula for the output. Another way how I rationalize it to myself that's quite close to it, but perhaps let's say 90 degrees to it. Business is about decision making.
Mhm.
And the time you put in only needs to facilitate decision making in the end. So you acquire information to make a decision, and you make a decision to lead to action. If somewhere in that time it breaks, that was a wasted hour. Any hour that you spend on not acquiring information, not making a decision on that information, and not taking action on that decision is a wasted hour. And if you cut out all of those hours, every one of us has them. If you cut out all of those hours, they were just wasted. So everything is about decision making. So now, if a 28-year-old VC out of London with a podcast wants to seriously tell me that a startup has
Oh, he
so many
said that.
decisions, like trajectory changing decisions to take every week that you need 996 to facilitate those decisions. I'm telling you, that person is just delusional. That's bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For sure, podcasters don't do so many hours.
Well, Patrick, you
Hardest
make me
decision.
think of one thing actually, in why you don't want to work that many hours. Because every day doesn't have a critical decision,
Yeah.
but every day could.
Exactly.
And if you're
Yeah.
not in a right mental health state and you're overtaxed, you are
Yes, sir.
sometimes everyone has been irrational and reacted um, over the top or allowed their emotions to get the best of them. And so, if you don't have some sort of way to ground yourself almost on a daily basis, when those situations do arise, do you make the best decision when the time's critical? Who knows?
I
And so,
think
you
you're always
want
best
that
to sleep on
person
it.
dead tired and mentally drained when the things actually come up that really materially matter to the business. Terrible
Yeah.
idea.
And I think also it's a sign of maturity where you know how you rest and how you are the most effective and efficient with what you do. So,
I agree with that too, Martin. I agree with that
yeah.
too. It's self awareness. Yep.
Martin, where
Yeah.
do you find the best way to operate is during the week?
When I sweat a lot, that's probably.
So,
And I'm
Kolkata.
Oh man, that could be so like
and
yeah.
I'm pushed by during workout. That's the best for me. After that, yeah,
Yeah.
Post workout clarity.
post workout
After this
clarity.
Oh
episode,
yeah, I could say that the best ideas, Patrick. I'm glad you say that. The best ideas honestly come to me in the shower after the gym. Like your mind is working at some different frequency, and you're away from the desk, which is also good. And you've just put yourself through a lot of stress, and now you're going back into like your normal state, and suddenly all the thoughts start coming back, and they're like, wow, wow, wow,
Mhm.
wow. And so I always have my notes ready, like going through my head when I'm showering in the gym.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that.
Yeah. I think none of us, by the way, just for the record, I think none of us is saying, hey, slack out or don't care
No.
or be unambitious. I think none of us is saying that. But
Yeah, saying that you have to put some certain number of hours in a week or in a day.
It's nonsense.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
Because
not.
isn't
like
it funny that
one,
that discussion correlates with hundreds of billions of dollars being invested in
yeah,
copycat AI companies? Like,
Mhm.
are you guys noticing the correlation here?
yeah. There's like a book that you buy from the shelf, right? And you just read it once, and then off you go.
Yeah, so, sorry, I invested in you. Turns out you're not defensible, so please work harder for me.
Yeah, I guess the only way where you should be pushing someone to put in 996 is a business where that is correlated to how much you're going to be able to invoice. But if you're trying to
Hmm.
do something that's
Mm,
defensible and something that is contrarian that can have an outside return, that just doesn't apply.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Also, don't forget, like a lot of time at the places where you are charging hourly is spent at the coffee machine or in the toilet or at the lunch hall
Yeah.
and
Sorry,
various
are you
other
saying we should
places.
train people not to eat or take bio breaks?
No, but I mean to another level, right?
Yeah, but
To another level.
then so you guys talking now about employees, really, I think, and employees you can't hold them working all the time because there's a like job satisfaction and they need to be happy with what they do and who they work with and how we deal with them. So
100%.
it
And
doesn't
again,
work with employees even, yeah, at all.
I mean, come on, guy. I mean, Steve Jobs taught us that it's still valid in the year 2025. We don't hire people to tell them what to do. We hire people for them to tell us what to do.
Mm,
Your employees need to be decentralized decision makers. That's the leverage that you build into your organization. So if you burn them out, you're going to get the same result.
Yeah.
How do you guys? I'm very curious how you go about decision making because I found myself in
Hmm.
some situations recently where I've had to make some decisions, and I found that the more sleeps I have on a decision, the better the decision comes, and I feel like with each day I can add a little bit more clarity and perhaps a stronger argument to what I'm about to do. However, recognizing that sometimes decisions also need to be made quickly, Um,
Mm.
by which I
From
guess at that point you're operating from more of an irrational level because you haven't thought about it properly. But then you have to trust that your instinct is correct, and perhaps this is a skill that is not taught and is just inherent in some people who do really hit the top when it comes to building businesses. What do you think?
So I find myself with like two types of problems sometimes. One is when you kind of evolve some sort of instinct to a problem and you very quickly can figure out where you're going and there's no thinking about it. Or if there's a new situation that I never came across with and I have to make a decision, which is important, I would never do it by guessing it. I would have to sleep on it. And this is literally sleeping and thinking about it the next day. If I feel pressure, someone's trying to put a pressure on it, then I just show them a middle finger.
You just say, "I'm an engineer. Leave me alone."
And that's my way of coping.
How about you, Dustin?
um,
While you're running,
I think
He
I'm
needs four
fortunate now
minutes to
that
an hour, so he's finishing it up.
no, I think I'm fortunate now. A lot of my decisions I at least can reflect on experiences from the past, and of course, you still encounter new. It depends on how big the problem is, but I'm more inclined to reach out to someone I know who is an expert because I'm really good at finding the right person that knows about this specific problem and asking them where my intuition is, or telling them where my intuition is and asking them if this aligns with how they would think about it. So if these are very critical decisions, why not go to someone who is that domain expert? Is maybe not has access to those individuals, but when I hope everyone people like have the humility to say,
hey Dustin, I don't know if you just moved location, but your connection seems to be lagging a little bit.
Yeah, maybe slow down a little bit when you're
Um,
running, if you're running.
how about
am I
you,
coming
Patrick?
in?
Any frameworks for you? I mean, you are making like big decisions, huh?
Yeah, my entire business is genuinely only decision making. Um, yes, it's a strong passion topic of mine, and one that, as a VC, you're forced to either optimize it or perish. Um, a lot of it has to do, for me, with defining my taste for a specific type of opportunity, a specific type of a person, a specific type of a context, and context and process. Um, and asking myself very consciously, the longer I spend time on that decision, what do I know and what is assumptions? That's one of the biggest things I realized about humans in business and in general. There's a ton of assumptions in decision making that humans make, all of us, without ever even realizing it. So the best thing you can already start doing to optimize your decision making is to make your what do you truly know to be true and what are the assumptions you're making, make that explicit to you. That will improve your decision making quality already very much. And then for us, we have spent many years on making our taste explicit to ourselves, some of which you can read on our website, and then some of which we will not publish because for avoiding reverse engineering. So basically someone telling us what we want to hear, right? So we will not do that. So for example, my founder taste is something I do not speak about publicly because it's like very pronounced, but I don't want someone to tell me what I want to hear. So for me, that's something that I spend literally today. I had a workshop with my partner on making an update on a specific part of our taste, whether that holds true with the we call it post-mortem. So you go after basically something failed or something you missed, and whether there was something in that specific post-mortem that we maybe had wrong in our taste. So that's something, thinking about that all the time. And I do think
Mm.
more business leaders need to do that because their business, like mine, is defined by decision making. It's the decision that moves your trajectory more than anything else.
How do you get out of a bias when you don't have a
I don't. I
cop?
love biases. Biases are generally a way how your brain teaches you to take shortcuts to an effective decision. Now, you need to apply the correct bias in the correct situation. That's the trick, right? And
Mhm.
so, racist biases, very, very bad. Gender biases, very, very bad, right? But biases towards other aspects of taste, where you see, for example, certain traits in the backstory, in the life story, in the hardships, crazy adversities during the upbringing of a founder. And I have a bias towards that because semi-anecdotally, semi-statistically, it has led to certain decision-making behaviors in a founder in the future. That's a great bias to actually amplify. So biases are a good thing, contrary to the general notion of it,
As
as
long as you
long
can
as it's
recognize them.
biases that are not discriminating.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. As long as you can recognize which one are giving you the right result.
Well, that's a good point. Sorry, Dustin, I saw you nodding, so I also want to hand the mic to you. So by having a taste, you are going to eliminate things that could also have worked out for you. But for me, that is still better going after my taste that I have rather than being arbitrary, random, or overly contextual and missing out or passing on certain things that otherwise could have also worked out for me. That's still preferential.
So that's another good question, I think, if I might. How do you know then that you're still learning rather than falling into biases and like way of thinking that you used to apply in the past?
Dustin, do you want to take that one or do you want me to quickly?
Quickly take that one.
Post-mortems, Martin. So you have to constantly reflect on past decisions and their outcomes.
So I think
Mhm.
what you said is very interesting, Patrick, in that the greatest investor in history had a bias that he acknowledged. I'm talking about Warren Buffett. He missed so many amazing businesses, and he was completely transparent and acknowledged that, hey, I don't have a bias for these. These are the businesses I look at because I know them and they work. And that worked out extremely well. So, a lot of people, and I have done this, and I now try not to do this. I get into spaces that I don't understand and I don't know how to calibrate or correlate success in those arenas. And you can be highly effective in almost any domain if you are the expert of that particular market. And so a lot of people are trying to look for what's the greatest opportunity.
Mhm.
Find good opportunities that you really, really understand and can qualify really well. And if you can do those, if you can just do that, you're going to be really successful. But Warren
Mm.
Buffett stayed away from all the tech. He's like, you know what? I know P&Ls, I know cash flowing businesses, I know sustainable brands, I know companies long term that compound over interest over time. I don't have to ride the tech wave and know when to get out of the market and all these things. And he's basically said, I'm not smart enough to do that. Hey, I'm not smart enough to be the security SaaS company evaluator. I don't do that stuff. I know construction tech. So
Yeah,
that's
but
it.
don't you believe that if you put enough time and focus into this other thing, then you can also become an expert? I think that that's possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that I have the aptitude to understand many different markets, but I don't want to leave an industry where I feel I have a unique competitive advantage built over the last 20 years to go into a space where now I am going to have to level myself up
Yeah.
to in an incredibly short amount of time to equate some of these knowledge bases and some of these patterns and some of these biases that people have built over their career. So, um, but I guess it's a personal preference. I don't need to be a domain expert on everything. I want to be a domain expert on construction technology and the AEC space and what works and what doesn't, and what are the problems affecting the customers we service and the industry in general.
And I think we can see it in your guys' businesses too. At least I would think so. I mean, have you ever turned down customers that wanted an offer from you or that wanted to you to serve them?
Yeah, oh, 100%, yes.
So why did you do it?
Yeah, because you just have some, like, you just, how do you describe this? Like, you just, something doesn't feel
He
right, and
sent
perhaps that's the bias kicking in, yeah?
they send a quote using generative AI.
Nah, you
Request
just,
for a quote.
ah, you know, they're a certain type of person that you don't want to deal with, which is a bias that you have formed over your experience of running a business.
I mean, to
Based on
me,
Or
if
what
someone
signal?
is
then there
not
could be
reasonable,
more hard facts, like they're trying to knock you down on price. But I wouldn't say that comes down to any kind of bias necessarily. That's more just like,
Is there a specific signal that you will say no? I'm not going to serve that customer.
like, so if I'm an expert and they're asking me to do something for them, and they are not reasonable in my eyes, asking me or just not reasonable within the scope of requirements, then just do it yourself.
Hmm.
I would say it comes down to more patterns actually, because they do certain things. I wouldn't say this like a as something that you would know almost straight out the bat, but like they do certain things that you that have repeated experiences that you've been through in the past that you think, actually I know where this is going, therefore I'm going to opt out at this stage.
Yeah, pain in the ass can be.
Ultimately, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's the bias, pain in the ass bias.
Yeah.
Shall we
Well,
spend the
I have
last?
biases,
Go ahead.
and even I have biases when I hire. I'm probably different on this. Like I know some people in sales, and they are very coin operated, and they absolutely always crush their quota, but they're kind of dickheads, and they're cocky and
Not a team
conceited.
players. Not team
No,
players.
and like they're going to go hit whatever number you assign them. I don't want them at Edify.
Hmm.
Mm, mm.
And might that sacrifice a little in a quarter? Maybe, but I don't think long term that that's sustainable. And I see, so it's also like if you're building a business, you have to think not just like the next 3 months. If you're really trying to build something big, you have to think about how all the pieces and components fit together and those individual attributes. And this is where I think, Patrick, your background and what have people experienced and what have they gone through to get here, um, is really important. I also like to ask, like, even if I'm talking to engineers, like what excites them, like what have they worked on that they were passionate about, and I look for people that like, especially on that product side, like, I love it when the thing I love the most is when they talk about some problem they solve for a customer, and how delighted they were. And if an engineer actually gets an adrenaline jolt from like solving problems from a customer level, that's really good because we're a customer first business. But I do sometimes worry about engineers that are like, oh, it's when I refactored this code base, and they can only talk about like optimizing just
Mm.
the specific engineering components. I worry about how that translates to building a customer company and
Yeah.
achieving outcomes for the customer. Yes, the refactor, but why did you do it? Well, our grid wasn't performing and our customers was, not getting the outcomes they like.
And you know what's the fascinating challenge now, and how we can tie it back to the 996, Dustin? As your company scales further and further and further, you have to instill your taste that you just formulated into every other employee. That's the true scale up
Yeah.
challenge. And in investment firms, by the way, that's one of the key reasons why the track record and the performance of funds as the organization grows is one of the bigger determinants for declining performance than the fund size, actually. It's my personal conviction. Instilling your taste into other people, that takes a very smart organization and great communication.
Yeah, I fully agree. With my
I'm looking
business,
forward to the brown jackets that come out of the fundamental
Yes, I only
employees.
want mini-me's. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I no longer judge engineer based on the engineers I work with based on how good engineers they are, but as this is like a base layer to get things done properly from engineering standpoint of view. But main point is how do they get on with customers, how they can get the message across, how can they convince in engineering manner. Um, yeah, that's my criteria for them for the last maybe year or so, rather than they have to be brilliant engineers and we'll figure out the rest. Because in the end of the day, it's all about customer, and it always comes down to how do we solve stuff for them.
Nice. Do we have 5 minutes for the Chat GPT note taker? Okay, who uses an AI note taker? Let's do a quick one.
Occasionally.
Particular or
Are you going to switch to Chat GPT?
I'll probably use the one embedded in Notion.
Interesting. Well, to the
sorry,
to the
note
point,
taker, note taker for what? For meetings or for something else?
yeah, meetings. I mean,
So where you're doing the meeting, that's where your note taking should be happening.
yeah, so the AI joins AI, whatever it is, comes and joins your meeting and takes the notes for you, sends you a summary, gives you a transcript, so on and so forth. So there was a lot of hype about, yeah, there's plenty of these companies around. One, and last night I think ChatGPT announced, oh damn, I have the wrong article in front of me. That effectively they were launching their own version. Correct me if I'm wrong. And
It's
what
like
I
a
found
next
fascinating
feature.
about this was that how many of these AI note-taking apps exist and are now no longer relevant. And also, literally 3 weeks ago, one of the largest ones that I know a number of people were using, at launched, funny enough, that usage spread mostly thanks to word of mouth among VCs and founders. Granola had launched 43 million at $250 million valuation. Is there a business there anymore?
Granola because it rhymes with Patagonia.
That's the best thing. One of the best things you've said on Bricks and Bytes.
Yeah, I think there's dozens like that. I mean, when you researched a year ago, perhaps you were looking for a meeting note taker, you would have found dozens of options, and all of them VC backed. Are they relevant anymore? I had my doubts before. I have my doubts still.
I think in this case, if this is ChatGPT or
Granola.
oh, this is OpenAI, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
OpenAI just launched
ChatGPT,
that feature.
OpenAI. So they are just adding a new feature, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If they think they can capture some, create some value for their customers. I think if someone was creating an AI note taker from scratch as a sole solution, that's probably not the smartest way.
Well, ChatGPT is trying to go after the enterprise. I mean, we're looking at purchasing a business license for our team for ChatGPT. So it makes sense to integrate with cloud storage providers. I think I saw G Drive was on there, and we use G Drive. So that all makes sense. I tend to lean that my AI note taking is based upon the application that I'm using for a particular workflow. So like Zoom is transcribing everything we're doing when we're having customer calls on Zoom meetings. And then that's, going to go to our CRM. And then we're in the process of migrating from HubSpot to Salesforce, but then we'd use Salesforce CRM to query the note takes and ask questions that we would like. And so it seems very contextual based on what workflow you're using is also providing you the AI solution. And this gets back to the bathtub and the faucet analogy. And
yes,
there is no bathtub. There's
just... I was going to let Patrick have the last say to close this week's episode down. So,
but the bathtub in terms of ChatGPT or in terms of like solution doing.
Yeah, in this case, ChatGPT becomes more and more the bathtub of customers who truly embrace it by adding more and more functional. And clearly, you are storing a lot of repo knowledge within ChatGPT if you truly commit to it. Yeah, and so I do think it renders, in this case, a lot of note-taking applications obsolete, and a lot of venture dollars that went into
wasted.
Very good.
And then what does it mean for construction tech founders that wrapped AI features into a point solution? I think that might not be pretty.
Dustin, why you considering to buy this corporate subscription, or how did you phrase it? for ChatGPT?
Oh, I already
What
have.
would that?
I already have employees expensing it, so I'd rather just bundle it up into an enterprise solution.
Oh, okay. So it's not something additional that comes in terms of functionality, but just like bundling it. Okay.
Good.
I thought
Okay,
you're going
guys.
to wrap Edify.
But we can't. Sorry, guys, we can't end. It's not 9 p.m. yet, so we have to do 9
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, Patrick's in charge now. Okay, so
9
what we're going to
p.m.?
talk about for another 3
Yeah, 9
hours.
to 9, man.
Oh, it's 9 p.m. in Dubai where I am. It's
Oh, that's good
Oh,
then.
really?
8:52.
Oh, good. Then okay.
You can
So-
go.
We've got 8 more minutes.
All right, guys. Been a pleasure. Thank you for joining, and we will discuss some more topics next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.